I really want you folks to focus on kind of the concepts of some of the things I'm going through today, not the actual numbers. They're going to be wrong. There's no way to do a specific economic presentation that's going to work for your farm. So the numbers are going to be wrong. Remember that. So I want you to focus on calculating your own numbers at home to do this. And to endure a number-based presentation at very early in the morning, and I'm well rested. I actually slept, but I was talking to Grant earlier. This is day 7, so the fact that I'm still coherent, you know, at my advanced age is kind of a miracle, it seems. So this seems very early to be talking about numbers. I do have a few paper copies of the presentation over on the table there. Maybe Laura can chuck those around if people are interested. And we actually are taking a bit of a change to throw some of our presentations that we're doing on our website. So if you Google MB Ag production cost, just trying to find the production cost page of Manitoba Ag, we've got our COPs there, including the organic one, Excel and PDF, and also copies of various presentations as well. It's just black and white printout that's going around, so color with the graphs would be better. But it is what it is. Any copies of the organic cost of production or not, but this is kind of what the PDF covers look like. If you find them on the website, this is kind of what they are. And the one change that I'm not doing in the presentation today, the last couple of years, unfortunately, as Laura mentioned, I kind of went through the guts of what goes into the COP. I'm not really doing that. I'm kind of doing more of my traditional kind of economics again, the production cost bulletin, we do try to update this every year. So far we've had the ability of trying to keep the organic, again, mirroring the conventional with kind of the format and layout. So it is there on the website for you to find. When it comes to cost of production planning, I really believe that it is the cornerstone of your production, marketing, and management plan. I don't care what your system is. I think this is something that you need to do. Top 25% profitability producers in Canada, cost of production, using your financial statements is definitely part of being in that top tier group. And again, knowing your cost of production on a per bushel basis is, to me, key, not on a per acre basis. We got to have it on a per bushel basis. And again, anytime you make changes to your plan, I think you've got to evaluate cost benefit to figure out if it truly is a benefit for the farm. Okay, so we're going to mostly go through some COP analysis, talk a little bit about agri-insurance, something you might not want to know about. If I got any time, which I probably won't, I'll be buzzing through some land and equipment stuff and talking about some of the other tools possibly. Okay, grain market outlook. I think organic is somewhat different than conventional, of course, but some of the fundamentals are still holding true. Everything is generally a little bit stronger except for cereals. When you're looking at wheat, for instance, is a bit softer this year than possibly last year. And hopefully Mr. Reaper stays in the rearview mirror unless he's coming to help harvest. So if he's coming to harvest, I'm all good. Okay, here we go. Starting in with the punishing number slides. They're going to kind of tame down a little bit here. So this is kind of the slate of organic crops, the cost, and the operating cost range for most of the organic crops is in the $200 to $250 per acre range, with total cost coming in at around $325 to $400 an acre. That is fairly consistent to some extent on the conventional side, where we are looking at operating cost of $150 to $300 an acre and total cost about $300 to $450. So actually fairly close on an overall basis. Okay, so when we're looking at the kind of the organic side of the analysis, I want to point out here today that the yields I'm using for the analysis are in the blue bar, and the prices are kind of on the red line, almost big enough to see, sorry. We're using 520 pounds of hemp at $1.75, 45 bushel winter wheat at $15.50, 35 wheat, hard wheat at $17.50, 15.5 bushel flax at $35, 80 bushel oats at $6.50, and 15 bushel soybeans at $28. So I'm really only going to look at these kind of 6 crops as kind of the main crop package moving forward. And on the conventional side, I'm kind of substituting canola for hemp. Otherwise, I'm going to kind of try to do apples and apples as best I can. So this is pulled straight out of the conventional COP, looking at 40 bushel canola at $10.75, 75 bushel winter wheat at $5, 55 bushel hard wheat at $6.25, and 25 bushel flax at $12.50, 100 bushel oats at $3.20, and 35 bushel soybeans at $11.50. So that's kind of the, if you can kind of keep those sort of numbers in mind as I roll forward, you'll kind of know where I'm coming from on the break-even yields and prices. Okay, now jumping right into the guts of the profitability here. We've got organic crop margins for 2017, and the gross revenue is shown in the red bars, and it is ranging from $400 to $900 an acre. And the margin over operating and fixed, shown in the green bars, kind of almost your total profit number, is they're all positive, and they range from $100 to $500 an acre. Oh yeah. Okay, on the conventional side, things, again, same, the gross revenue in the red bars, and we're looking at gross revenues ranging from $300 to $425. And again, the organic side was $400 to $900. And the margin over operating and fixed on the conventional is ranging from $30 to $85 an acre. And the one thing I kind of want to point out is on the conventional side, soybeans off on the right is the highest margin conventional crop, and it's also the lowest margin organic crop in my comparison, by the way, if you haven't kind of noticed that already, just as a little side note. Okay, now we're starting to kind of drill down a little bit into a little more guts of this, and starting to look at break-even yields on the organic side for 2017. The notable ones, and again, this is break-even over operating and fixed costs. The notable ones here are wheat at 19 bushels, flax at 8.6, oats at 46, and soybeans at 12. Those should be achievable break-even yields at the prices that I've stated earlier. That is a good thing to see. So everyone's kind of got how I'm getting to this, taking my cost divided by my yield, coming up with, or sorry, cost divided by price, apologies, to get the break-even yield. On the conventional side, we're looking at break-even yields over operating fixed again. Wheat is sitting at 50 bushels an acre, flax at 22, oats at 87, and soybeans at 28. The break-even yields on the conventional side are much, much higher, and potentially a lot more challenging to reach depending on production and market conditions. So now when we're talking on things on a per bushel basis, when we're looking at break-even prices, because again, we sell on a bushel basis, we don't sell on the acre basis. So break-even prices on the organic side for operating and fixed in the green bars, notable ones are wheat at $8.56, flax at $19.48, oats at $3.70, and soybeans at $21.60. From what I know about organic pricing, all of these numbers are very achievable. And I believe that, again, the old saying of you never go broke selling at a profit really applies in this case. I think the chance for profit based on these break-evens is definitely real. Comparing to the conventional side again, we're looking at wheat at $5.72, flax at $11.21, oats at $2.80, soybeans at $9.10. Again, whole lot tighter to actual market prices on the conventional side. Should be achievable, but again, an awful lot tighter. Now, same thing that I said yesterday in the FCC theater, for those of you that were there, sorry, same concept here. Darren, Bond, and I are trying to push forward the concept of looking at your target or average yield as a percentage of your break-even yields. Over 100% is good, less than 100% is bad. What we're really trying to get across here is trying to evaluate the inherent risk that the farm is under. So the closer to 100% and over 100%, the more risk the farm is under. So here, on the conventional side is what I'm starting with here. Canola is exceeding by 6.4%. 55 bushel wheat is dead on break even at, well, pretty well 100%. And oats is exceeding by 3.3%. This is my, again, I'm calling it my NASCAR analogy. How close to the wall are you? Where are you going to run into a production or a financial wreck? So this is kind of an indication of risk. This is the organic side. We're looking at a very different picture here. We are looking at that 520 pound hemp exceeding the break-even ratio by 122%. So there's quite a bit of room there on those break-even yields. We're looking at wheat exceeding by 68%. We're looking at oats exceeding by 45%, and the soybeans are only by 9%. So when you compare the previous slide to this slide, in terms of my NASCAR, where's the wall? What production system do you think has less inherent risk? And I'm not saying one is better than the other, I'm just talking about inherent risk. Obviously, it appears from the numbers, the organic side has got less risk on that scenario. Okay. Okay, got to keep rolling here. Now, my favorite what if, or my stress test. So if we look at the possibility of prices down by 10% and yields down by 5%, the margins certainly do get tighter, but they are still positive. So we're looking at margins, somewhere in the still, again, over operating and fixed, somewhere in the $25 to over $400 range still on the organic side. All still positive. And when we compare to the conventional side, I've only got two that are left in the positive under a 10% price drop and 5% yield drop. So the only two that are left positive are winter wheat and soybeans. So that's kind of the difference here in terms of the what if. Again, this really highlights almost no matter what your production system, you still have to produce and successfully market a crop, and a good crop, above average crop, if you're going to make some money. Or all this fancy economics and all this stuff doesn't matter beans. You gotta produce and market every time. Okay, so we wanna look at agri-insurance here a little bit. And we're trying to get across the concept of looking at insurance, agri-insurance, like hail insurance. So I'm trying to look at your premium per acre as a percentage of your coverage, just like hail insurance. So in this, on the conventional side, and I'm using risk area 2 back in Killarney, probably worked for David. We're looking at 80% coverage on canola is 1.9%, wheat is 2.5%, and soybeans are 6.2%. So MASC is telling you that soybeans is a higher risk crop to insure. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. Now, flipping to the organic side, things look a little bit different. Still looking at the conventional side here. We're covering on this, 80% insurance, we're covering 115 to 140% of operating cost. So that's what the risk area 2 insurance is at. And that is shown in the red line. And on total cost, which is shown in the green line, is covering 65 to 75% of total cost. So that is the conventional side. And this is where I want to remind people that we insure liabilities and not revenues. So that's what we're trying to achieve here, is insuring those liabilities. So when we look at those liabilities that we're covering or trying to insure, 80% insurance, risk area 2, 2016 insurance numbers actually, it's leaving $90 to $120 per acre of total cost not covered. And this kind of analysis, again, gives you another indication of risk that your farm is under. Okay, here we go. Organic insurance. The numbers I've got here based are on organic flax, organic wheat, organic winter wheat, and organic oats. The rest are conventional. So kind of the two on the outside are with hemp and soybeans are based on conventional insurance. So the 80% coverage for hemp is 9.4%, wheat is sitting at 10.5%, flax at 11.4%, and soybeans at 6.4%. Do you think that organic insurance premiums are considerably more expensive on a percent coverage basis than conventional? Yes. That's what the numbers say. That's just straight up, right out of, like, the numbers are public, you can look them up and do the math yourself. When you look at what that means in terms of cost coverage, comparing back to the COP, that 80% organic insurance is covering 70 to 110% of operating costs. So it's almost covering all of the operating costs, but only 40 to 70% of total cost. So the insurance is more expensive and it covers less.
Can you send a copy of that to MASC?
I'm guessing they're going to figure this out on their own, because I've kind of said this a few times elsewhere. So, thanks.
I brought it up to one of the board members.
Okay. I'm just stating the obvious. I'm not trashing them. I'm just stating what's out there. So, like, I have no opinion. Please, do I make that clear? I have no opinion. I still want to be employed on Monday. So what this leaves, again, from the organic side is more costs not covered. So here we've got, in blue, we've got operating costs not covered, and then that total cost not covered is now $110 to $210 an acre. So again, it does indicate some risk exposure to the farm. So that's what it is. Okay, I only got a couple of minutes left, right? And we got to get out of here. So I don't have enough time to go through everything, but when I kind of compare to margin over operating, which is kind of where you got to come up with your land, equipment, and owner's draw, you're looking probably 65% operating cost on a conventional side. And that's going to give you hopefully about a 5% owner withdrawal. And on the organic side, we're looking at a kind of a completely different flip. We're looking at about 43% operating cost, which gives you more margin over operating, close to 60%, which should give the owner a bigger piece of the pie. We could be looking at upwards of 27% of that revenue pie going to the owner withdrawal. Again, that's kind of why we're in this business, is to make a few bucks. Couple quick things on land values. I talk about land rent in the 18 to 22% range, and because we've got such a, on the organic side, a fairly big gross revenue spread, I'm looking at somewhere between, say, $350 and $500. That would indicate, on those percentages, rent in the 63 to 110 range. And if we look at land values, kind of flipping back the other way to do a check and balance, if we look at land revenues, or gross revenues, times factors of 5 for cheap land, 6 to 8 for reasonable land, and times 10 for expensive land, that theoretically is putting reasonable or realistic land values based on those gross revenues somewhere between $21,000 and $4,000 an acre. So if we take the reasonable land values, kind of the low end of $21 or $2,100, and multiplying by 2.5% investment rate of return on that land, adding in tax, that cash rent is $64. That matches the bottom end of the 18%. We do it on the high end, and now we're looking at, say, $4,000 an acre land, investment rate of return rent is $112 an acre. The challenge to this is, if you were going to be buying $4,000 an acre land at 5% for 20 years, you're going to need probably 2 acres paid for to make that equation work on most farms. So that is also about the wall of where people are at. So when I talk about reasonable, I talk about most farms probably being able to handle it. When I talk about insanity, I talk about most farms not being able to handle that. So when I kind of try to summarize very quickly a few thoughts on land value planning, rent 18 to 22% is one thing to keep in mind. Rent minus taxes divided by 2.5% is land value. Gross revenue times 4 to 6 should be reasonable land value. Land value times 2.5% plus taxes should be land rent. In case you haven't noticed, I'm trying to tell you it's circles. The reason I'm trying to point this out kind of in an excruciating way to this crowd is if you've got a different gross revenue stream, if you've got a different profitability, your ability to pay for land could be different than your neighbor. And if you're trying to get an unfair competitive advantage, if you haven't figured it out with your gross revenue and your margins, I think you just found it. So that's why I'm trying to tell you how to figure out if you've got an advantage or not. And the last comment I'll make, because I think I'm out of time, is on equipment. We've been kind of throwing out the idea of, say, like the conventional side is $450, so I'm just kind of throwing it out. It's typically 12 to 15% or so of gross revenue. But we're looking at, say, $500 an acre equipment investment. $100 could maybe go to four-wheel drive, $175 an acre to a combine, $75 for each of drills, sprayers, and etc. So roughly, somebody comes along and says, hey, I farm 1,000 acres. I want to buy a four-wheel drive. How much should I spend? $100,000. Where's the rest of your equipment investment at? High, low, then you kind of adjust accordingly. But you can only spend so much on equipment. So I just thought I'd kind of throw that out. And with that, I'm going to ignore the rest of my presentation.
We've got some time for a few questions. Does anyone have a question?
Well, you really got to go back through the organic cost bulletin that we've prepared, and that really will figure things out for you. The reason it is I basically put full cost towards the plow down and the fertility side. So by the time I'm done dealing with compost applications, plow downs in 1 and 3, 1 and 4. Sorry, I forget. Too much of a fog here. By the time you do that cost allocation back over the production years, the costs are actually very similar. And seed costs are higher again because a bushel of organic wheat is more. So by the time you're done, that's why the costs are fairly similar. So I would encourage you to grab a copy of that, go through it, and hopefully it makes sense. If it doesn't, give me a call. I'm not that hard to find. David.
On the yield side of things, I suspect the reason the crop insurance is so expensive is historically the yield's been low.
Yes.
Claims.
Yes.
And your soybean yield seems to be pretty modest. Do you want to comment on the variability or the range of yield potentials?
Yeah. I mean, David, I think you know the answer to this better than I do. If you look at the If you look at the conventional side, people ask, what's the average yield of soybeans in Western Manitoba? And my standard answer is 10 to 40. And they say, no, what's the average? No, it's 10 to 40. Actually, I should probably say 0 to 40. Because zeros are going to be out there. And while you look at that range of averages and you look at what crop insurance was covering us in Western Manitoba for soybeans, it was like 20-ish bushels an acre, something like that. Now I think it's starting to climb and some of the individual coverages are starting to be almost reasonable, like over 30 bushels, but it's taken some time. Hopefully crop insurance, and again, I don't know the inside of their calculations, but hopefully when they start looking at the organic side, kind of in that individual coverage sort of concept, that some of the yields can increase. So some of the coverage levels, again, based on lower yields, but based on hopefully higher prices, will actually matter. And that's kind of why I, to be honest, had the courage to try to do that insurance analysis to try to point out, in my mind, the obvious. I know there's risk there, I get that. And it's different than the conventional side, but it's expensive.
Yeah, I did a quick look at our own insurance, and I think you pay 3 times more for half as much.
Yeah, I think you've probably got that figured out fairly well. Okay.
So Roy, if you were starting out in farming tomorrow, would you go organic?
To be honest, Laura, tough question. I think the question is deeper than that. It's what production system do you want? Because to me, if you want to be organic, you've got to have livestock, you've got to have forage, you have to have land-based suitable, you have to be willing to have a totally different production mindset with your boots on the ground. So you have to be willing to do all of that before you get to that conclusion. If you want to farm 5,000 acres, just like Dad did, and deal with all of that the same, it's not going to work. Like, you just don't take fertilizer out, chemical out, I'm now organic. It's a totally different package. And I know there's people in the room that can speak to that much better than I can. It's a production and marketing option that appears financially viable. That's where we're at.
That's all I was trying to get him to say.
Thanks. Stick the knife in. Anyways, if anyone does have questions, presentation's on the website, the organic cost of production's on the website. I'm sitting in downtown Killarney, at least occasionally. Might even return a phone call if I happen to be there. It's getting a little tight for finding Manitoba Ag bodies. You guys have been great. Enjoy the rest of your day. See ya.